My name is Jason Park, and I am the director and co-writer of Transplant.
It's so hard to start with this movie because there's just so much stuff going on. So I'm going to go with the easiest route with the title.
Yeah.
So it's called Transplant, and it deals with a surgeon who does transplants of organs.
Yes.
But I have a sneaking suspicion it also deals with the other definition of transplant, which is like the abrupt insert of something into another.
Right.
So can you kind of talk about the title and then go from there a little bit?
Well, yeah, I think it just made a lot of sense because it's obviously dealing with heart transplantation surgery, but also I think one of the major, it's a theme, but I think I kind of, it's more of a question about what it's like to assimilate into an environment that isn't necessarily yours. And when you're highly motivated and ambitious as Jonah is, and you're so tunnel visioned about your goals in life, what does that look like, and what does that reflect, both from like a psychological and behavioral standpoint. And so to us, transplant just kind of embodied all of that, both from obviously from like a science, a medical perspective, but also from the questions and themes that we were asking.
It's just so amazing because it's intense. This whole movie is intense. I was on edge, also doing this with every close up, by the way. So, I mean, just surgery itself is a very intense and I keep saying that because it is intense. It's life-threatening,
right,
and it could be very emotional.
Right.
But there's several story plots going on at the same time.
Right.
So, how did you even get into this?
Get into the worlds, like just being
like a medical
story
and that close with
right.
Organs. Like, why no organs?
Well, I think from a story perspective, being a Korean American, I come from a community that has a decent amount of medical professionals and people who are on that track. And so I think the first thing that was really apparent was how challenging that process is, and not from a occupational perspective. Obviously, being a doctor is hard. It should be. But I think I was surprised by how grueling it was from a emotional and psychological perspective. And I think that being rooted from the culture of medicine, the hierarchy of medicine, the almost this fraternity-like structure that exists. And I think on top of that, we kind of talked about navigating a space that's not necessarily yours, and so using the world of medicine or that aspect of medicine, plus that journey of trying to master your environment from a Korean American's perspective. I think that's what was the initial jump. And I think it being a personal story, but also knowing we're making a film, we're making a movie. I think it was very clear to us, to my co-writer and I, David, that it should be told in this like taut 90-minute thriller structure, where we're really embracing the environment of the operating world and using that space to let these characters play and do some very questionable things.
Very questionable.
And I think it was just a really great. It was just a very clear combination and cross section of genre, story, environment, and character.
How did you talk to anybody consulting? Because the interactions is so real.
I mean, we definitely did our research and try to talk to as many people as we could about experiences, different situations. I think a part of what I think people are surprised by is that we actually had to withhold some things because it didn't feel believable. And we even got some pushback early on that they felt like some of the things that were happening in the film on script at that time was unrealistic.
Wait,
and so
what?
yeah,
Which
so
part was unrealistic?
well, not to ruin a scene, but like the throwing of the instrument,
Oh no, I could attest that is realistic as hell.
Right.
I actually thought it was a bit curved.
Yeah. No, we had to definitely soften it because we didn't want to, the realism is 100% subjective. And so, we were very mindful of what we can and cannot do on screen in this film. And so, but no, talking to a lot of residents and doctors and surgeons, and we had a lot of consultants, nurses, nurse practitioners, assistants that would really show us, what is truthful. And I think that's part of the power is a strong word, but I guess I'll use it here, of the film, in that it's showcasing a reflection of a world that I don't think most people realize. Not to be critical, I mean we should be, but the film's not trying to be critical. It's just a reflection of a world that does exist.
It's so fascinating that, from the Korean American perspective, you almost see him like shift away from his own community, and he's so, like you said, tunnel focused into this, and then he almost loses it. And I think a lot of it also goes to the acting for Eric Nam. He's in this movie. Eric Nam is in this movie. He is not the same Eric Nam that you see on YouTube. How the heck was that directing him to go from like, I'm Eric Nam to, holy crap, don't get in the same room with him?
Yeah. I think that's first and foremost like the power of Eric and his ability, and I think his genius in terms of being able to do different things. But also, I think, early on we talked a lot about his parallels with Jonah, and I think what was really powerful during the casting process was how he just empathized and understood what it's like to be someone like Jonah, who is super motivated and super focused and committed to the craft, which means that sacrifices are inevitable, and that's just that's the price of playing poker. But also keep harping on this theme, but of also mastering your environment and navigating spaces that you have to be able to, kind of role play a little bit. And not to say Eric does that, but I think he understood that.
He definitely did.
Yes.
He nailed it like so
yes.
hard.
And I think, being, it's less about directing Eric or directing Bill. It's more so just kind of collaborating and finding what works best for them and what feels real to them, but also sticking to the big picture of the film, which is Jonah is, I use this in, I don't think I've used this phrase, but he's a serial killer. He's a killer. Excuse me, not a serial killer. He's a killer. He's a killer, and he may not come off like it. And I think that's also a quality that Eric has that isn't taught. Like Eric, you look at Eric and he looks like the nicest, most charismatic person, but I think that's the power of that image, and then contrasting that to who Jonah is, right? Which is, he is a killer. And so I think that was a really nice juxtaposition for him. And so
I'm gonna look at Eric and be like, killer. Bill Kemp.
Yes.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
His delivery of lines is so chilling, but yet you're like, I'll do whatever you told me to do. So, wow, how can you talk about him a little bit? Because holy moly.
I mean, Bill's Bill. I mean, Bill to me is like even before Transplant, he was one of my favorite actors to watch because he always elevated whatever film that he was in. And he's just a natural and a presence. And so there wasn't really much for me to do besides get out of his way, because he just understood it. And that's both just his natural raw ability, but also his practice and his commitment. And so, no, it was really, it was such an honor and a privilege for me to watch him every day on set and just really kill the cadence and the rhythm, literally, to really just nail the cadence and the rhythm and the tonality of those lines.
It is just,
it's very precise.
Pattern,
yes.
and it's so it gets you.
Yeah.
It's wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to both be there on set, but to also to edit with Zoe, our editor, because they were delivering every time, so it was great.
They got chills sometimes, like, oh, that's kind of creepy.
It was fun. Yeah.
And then just kind of on a technical filming, like I mentioned over and over again, because you do film a lot of organs, it's very visceral how it's filmed. I'm assuming it's not real bodies you're filming.
Is it?
Okay, is it? Was there anybody that was like squeamish about it? Like it was so real they're like, like did you have like any flinches in the surgery room?
I'm trying to remember if anyone was. I think when you're there, you know it's fake. It feels, it's like, even for me, I'm very numb to it all now because I know it's artificial to me. But I do have to shout out Vincent Van Dyke Special Effects, who created all of the prosthetics and the cadavers and the bodies and the organs, and they had puppeteers to do the heart rhythm beat. So everything we tried to do everything in camera, because I think I'm just kind of like that, especially in medical stuff, because I think it shows.
It's so important.
And so
Yeah, shout out, because that was too real.
yeah, no,
Too real.
and I think we really wanted to embrace that and to not shy away from it too much, from the writing to pre-production to production to post. It was just really important to do everything we can to be as authentic and truthful as possible. Look, it's a film, so we're always going to take some liberties, but no, I truly have so much love and respect for all the people who helped us throughout this process, because they were purely doing it just to help and be there for us.
Team effort showed, because it's
Yeah.
an amazing piece.
Yeah, no, it was. They really did save our film in a lot of ways, and so no, there were so many of them, and so shout out to all the consultants that helped throughout the way. Yeah.
The movie doesn't really end on a happy note, nor does it end on a creepy note. Oh, okay, you know what? I'm going to start all over again. It ends on a very unsettling note. What is your take? Like, you hope that audience will take away from this movie? Never go to the doctor?
You should go to their doctor. Almost all doctors are great, and they will help you. I think it's okay to feel conflicted.
Good point. Yeah.
I'm one to really embrace, as cheesy as it sounds, I really love when a film ends in a way that sticks with you. And it may not be the most rewarding ending, or immediately the most rewarding or most emotional, but it stays with you because there's something about it that is unsettling. And I think it's fair for anyone to say this is a sad ending or a happy ending. That's, it's not, it really is the viewers at that point. But I think the only takeaway that I hope people have is to really investigate the cost of decisions, and to see not just Harmon's, but also obviously Jonah's, especially with the ending, but also I think Minah's, and what they're all doing and saying by those decisions. And so I think it's totally fair. I think it's totally fair to feel unsettled and conflicted, and I think to me that makes sense.
So Bill's music in the surgery room is jazz. Jonah's is classical music. Now, you said he was a killer, and killers tend to like classical music. Was that the intention of it, or is there another meaning to the different musical choices?
I don't think it's wrong to say that. I also think it's also a reflection of Jonah's upbringing, right? He played classical music. He was trained that way. I think it also says the film, to me, kind of plays in this musical world, in this like orchestration in this piece. And I think also not just about the genre of music, but it also says a lot about just the characters and power and influence.
They created that environment.
Right.
This is their soundscape.
Right, and this is their space. And so, and I mean, talk about contrast between funk and jazz versus, classical music. It is stark. And I think that says a lot about just their dynamic and relationship and their individuality. So.
Yeah, this is why I said it's a very layered. There's so much to explore in this one. But I'm going to end on a very goofy question.
Yeah.
Who would you have do your surgery, Bill or Jonah?
Jonah,
Jonah.
because You have to see the movie.
Yeah, you gotta see the movie. There's a reason why.
There's a reason why. So, Jonah.